a state of pride arising out of an overestimation of one's own ability, possessions, or importance. The first thing to talk about is the definition of conceit, which is found in Galatians chapter 6 verse 3. It says, "For if anyone thinks he is something when he is nothing, he deceives himself." A second thing to take note of is that there are examples of conceit. The first example is being conceited in military strength. Exodus 15 verse 9, it says, "The enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will divide the spoil. My desire shall not have its fill of them. I will draw my sword, my hand shall destroy them." The second thing regarding an example of conceit is in the power of idols. Acts chapter 9 verse 9 through 10 says, "But there was a man named Simon who had previously practiced magic in the city and amazed the people of Samaria, saying that he himself was somebody great. They all paid attention to him from the least to the greatest, saying, 'This man is the power of God, and that is called great.'" Third thing regarding an example of conceit is conceit in personal abilities. Matthew chapter 26 verse 33 says, "Peter answered him, 'Though they all fall away because of you, I will never fall away.'" Genesis chapter 16 verse 4 says, "And he went in to Hagar, and she conceived, and when she saw that he had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress." The fourth thing under the example of conceit is in false teaching. 1 Timothy chapter 6 verse 3 to 4 says, "If anyone teaches a different doctrine and does not agree with the sound words of our Lord Jesus Christ and the teaching that accords with godliness, he is puffed up with conceit and understands nothing. He has an unhealthy craving for controversy and for quarrels about words, which produce envy, dissension, slander, evil, and suspicions." The next thing is conceit in possessions. Hosea chapter 12 verse 8 says, "Ephraim has said, 'Ah, but I am rich. I have found wealth for myself. In all my labors they cannot find in me iniquity or sin." One can have conceit in intellectual ability. Psalms chapter 73 verse 7 through 9 says, "Their eyes swell out through fatness. Their hearts overflow with follies. They scoff and speak with malice. Loftily they threaten oppression. They set their mouths against the heavens, and their tongues strut through the earth." National status is also an example of conceit. Isaiah 16 verse 6 says, "We have heard the pride of Moab, how proud he is, of his arrogance, his pride and his insolence, and his idle boasting. He is not right." Jeremiah says in his 48th chapter verse 29, "We have heard the pride of Moab. He is very proud, of his loftiness, his pride and his arrogance, and his haughtiness of heart." God has a response to conceit. 2 Samuel chapter 22 verse 28 says, "You save a humble people, but your eyes are on the haughty to bring them down." 1 Corinthians chapter 1 verse 27 through 29 says, "But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring nothing the things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God." Obadiah 3 through 4, "The pride of your heart has deceived you. You will live in the clefts of the rock, in your lofty dwelling. Who will say in your heart, 'Who will bring me down to the ground?' Though you soar aloft like the eagle, though your nest is set among the stars, from there I will bring you down, declares the Lord." The fourth thing to take note of regarding conceit in the scriptures is that there are warnings against conceit. Philippians chapter 2 verse 3 says, "Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves." Proverbs chapter 3 verse 7 says, "Be not wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord, and turn away from evil." The fifth thing regarding conceit is the folly of conceit. Proverbs chapter 26 verse 12 says, "Do you see a man who is wise in his own eyes? There is more hope for a fool than for him." Proverbs chapter 28 verse 26 says, "Whoever trusts in his own mind is a fool, but he who walks in wisdom will be delivered." Isaiah 16 verse 6, "We have heard of the pride of Moab, how proud he is, of his arrogance, his pride and his insolence, and his idle boasting is not right." James chapter 3 verse 5, "So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things. How great a forest is set ablaze by such a small fire." James chapter 4 verse 16, "As it is, you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil." The sixth thing regarding conceit is the danger of conceit for Christians. 1 Corinthians chapter 10 verse 12 mentions, "Therefore let anyone who thinks that he stands take heed lest he fall." Romans chapter 11 verse 25, "Lest you be wise in your own sight, I do not want you to be unaware of this mystery, brothers. A partial hardening has come upon Israel until the faithfulness of the Gentiles comes in." 1 Timothy chapter 3 verse 6, "He must not be a recent convert, or he may become puffed up with conceit and and fall into the condemnation of the devil. 1 John chapter 2 verse 16, for all that is in the world, the desire of the flesh and the desire of the eyes and pride of life is not from the Father, but from the world. The last and final thing regarding conceit, there are remedies for conceit. The first thing is being aware of one's sin. Luke chapter 18 verse 9 through 14 says, he also told this parable to some who trusted in themselves that they were righteous and treated others with contempt. Two men went up into the temple to pray, one a Pharisee, one a tax collector. The Pharisee, standing by himself, prayed thus, God, I thank you that I am not like other men, extortioners, unjust, idolaters, or even like this tax collector. I fast twice a week, I give tithes of all that I get. But the tax collector, standing far off, would not even lift his eyes to heaven, but beat his breast, saying, God, be merciful to me, a sinner. I tell you, this man went down to his house justified rather than the other. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, but to the one who humbles himself will be exalted. Second thing regarding a remedy for conceit is being prepared to mix with the lowly. Romans chapter 12 verse 16, live in harmony with one another. Do not be haughty, but associate with the lowly. Never be wise in your own sight. The third remedy for conceit is considering others as being superior. Philippians chapter 2 verse 3 says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves.